Hi guys, Gnemon here and welcome to 35th episode of Fun Farms. Today we have a new type of an XP farm that has some qualities that other farms don't have. And we'll look into two new mechanics in the game that make it possible, or at least make it a little bit more bearable and elegant. Shulker duping and mountain goats. Just kidding, it's XP stacking and powdered snow. Garden farms have been my favorite way of obtaining XP, not only because they give the most and the fastest XP of all the intended ways of getting it, but also it allows to have the XP farm close to home in the overworld, so we don't rely on the other dimensions to provide us with XP. The thing is, even if you are playing on a busy server, it's good to diversify your XP sources anyway, so there's always a dimension you can use for a steady source of fast XP, whether this being an Enderman farm, Pigman farm or Guardian farm. And if you are playing on your own, Guardians is the best way to do it. However, traditional Guardian farms were not the most convenient to use. The thing is, speed is not everything. The hands-free Pigman XP farms are best when you need to use the XP for something else, to mend some tools or combine on the anvil large amount of items, juggling them in and out of the shulker boxes. This mechanic of letting the mobs drop XP when not directly killed by the player, or a dog, or a player potion or TNT, just from pure anger, is promised to be removed in 1.17 anyways, and having a new way of getting a lot of XP with minimum player interaction is in high demand. And this is where this concept of a mob farm comes into play. In other regular farms that works with single player, the speed of the farm is controlled how fast the farm can spawn mobs, as well as the mob cap, how many mobs are present in player's dimension. Therefore, it is important to strike a good balance of managing spawning speed and time it takes between spawning and harvesting of the mobs, given the available mob cap. In this farm today, we'll be removing the mob cap component from the equation, allowing your farm to spawn mobs as fast as your computer can handle, and as a side effect, you will not need to stand in one place while killing mobs constantly to clear out the mob cap, which would allow you to have much more time to do what you need with your XP, mend and combine stuff. What else do you need the XP for? So in this farm, we'll be spawning mobs with the player in the overworld, moving them to the nether right after they spawn. This removes them from the mob cap, allowing more mobs to spawn. But it also allows them to build up in the nether where they are not affected by the mob cap as a reservoir. Mobs that change the dimension will need to be moved out of any portals for the next 15 seconds, but that's a good timing to build up substantial number of them. Right after that 15 seconds passes, first mobs will be re-entering the overworld potentially softened and ready for the player, which will fill up the mob cap then quite quickly to 70, blocking new spawns. However, this will happen with the pipeline of mobs still in the nether waiting to go to the overworld, with the newest mobs just entering the nether at this point. So it'll take another 15 seconds to clear up that pipeline. So in total, 35-40 seconds give or take per cycle. That gives us two things. First of all, we don't need to actively swipe at the Guardians with swords and potions to get the XP, since they'll be coming in very large batches, every 40 seconds or so. And if there's at least 180 Guardians in a batch, which is 5 per second, which is what we need to get maximum XP of from Guardians, we will be getting a maximum XP per player that we can ingest. However, with a good enough spawner, we should be able to get much more than 180 of them. You see, there is nothing that caps their spawning for the entirety of this 15 seconds, which means that the amount of Guardians that will held on the other side should only be limited how much our computer or server admin can handle, and it can do much more than 180. We'll be aiming for about 450-500 of them, and that will be plenty to get us fully experienced for almost 2 minutes. There are two new things in 1.17 that make such a setup possible. First is quite obvious, the new XP stacking mechanics. Now let's quickly cover some XP basics. Mobs drop XP of various amounts that breaks down into orbs, or fixed XP point values, 1, 3, 7, 17, etc. That series quickly grows, and most mobs drop only orbs that are worth 1, 3 or 7 points anyways. Player can ingest 10 of these orbs per second. Enderman, for example, drops 5 XP and Guardians 10 XP, twice as much. But since 5 can only be divided into 3 orbs, valued in 3, 1 and 1, this means that it will take us longer to slurp all that XP comparing to the Guardians, which produces only 2 orbs, 3 and 7. This means that the Enderman farm lets you get only 60,000 XP per hour and the Guardian farms 180,000, 3 times more. All other mobs fall somewhere in between. Now, previously to 1.17, if you would attend an XP farm that produces way too much XP comparing to what you can ingest, that would create a massive lag at some point, which might as well crash your game. That doesn't happen in 1.17, and the reason is that XP orbs that have the same XP value and are close enough and have a similar enough entity ID, which is a little bit technical, would form one XP ball that represents them both. And with more XP orbs coming, they can stack even more than that. So at the end, you should end up with a maximum of 40 orbs for each XP value, regardless of how much initial orbs they represent. This, however, doesn't change the speed with which we can ingest them. Every time an orb could merge with the player, it only reduces its stack count by 1, simulating ingestion of one of the previous orbs, and the rest of the stack continues to ride around the player. So I have here added a simple visualizer to show the stack counts of all the orbs that have more than one orb inside of them, so you can see how they decrease relatively slowly. This has several interesting implications. First of all, you can just spam your sword like there is no tomorrow, creating more and more XP, since all of the newer orbs will at some point just merge with the existing ones, keeping the number of XP orbs entities in check. The cool thing about that orb when merged will refresh their despawn timer, meaning that even if you are busy doing combining and mending, you can just come back to the mobs from time to time to get a few new orbs to refresh the current ones, giving them a few more minutes until they despawn. Every time we do it, we get an extra 5 minutes on our XP orbs. The second side effect, is a minor one, is that particularly Enderman farms don't suck as much as before, especially at the beginning. What happens is that since there is twice as much orbs of value 1 than 3, all the small orbs form simply twice as larger stacks, meaning that it takes them twice as longer to get depleted and get fully ingested. This makes so that the first 66% of the time the player will be ingesting XP at the rate of 72,000 XP per hour, not 60, and at the remaining third of the time at 36,000 XP per hour, so very slow. This means that if you're done with whatever you were meant to do at the Enderman farm, you can just fly out and shake off all the remaining less valued orbs, knowing that you have benefited from slightly faster XP rate at the beginning. So one concept that's technically possible but would be very difficult to execute is to filter out orbs of smaller value from the mix of orbs of mixed values. That was impossible to do previously, since all XP orbs behave exactly the same and the difference in appearance was only visual. Now, technically it would be possible to use, let's say, a mix of orbs from an Enderman, which has orbs of value 1 and 3, to interact with the Guardian orbs valued at 3 and 7. The problem is when orbs merge, they always merge other orbs to them, and the order of which orbs are being processed is based on the hash order, meaning that it's not that orbs that were created first will have a priority over the orbs that are created later. So sorting orbs is now technically possible, it just might be prohibitively difficult to pull off because of that little detail. Another option that's actually much more doable is to create some generator with a very heavy flow of mix of orbs of different values, like 3 and 7 from Guardians, which is definitely possible, and then build up some crazy amount of XP orbs that would technically give us a very long ingestion time ahead of us. And then right before they would reach their spawn limits, if you could provide the player with a reliable source of orbs of size 7 without the orbs of size 3, we could sustain that initial large source of size 7 orbs for longer, giving us a boost from 180,000 XP per hour to over 250,000 XP per hour. So unlike the XP orb filtering, this is actually much more doable, but probably still not worth the hassle to do that at this point. So these were some potential benefits of the new XP stacking, but the main benefit is that we don't need to be scared of XP farms that simply over-provide XP orbs, since it eliminates the core reason why they lacked in the first place. They are now much more usable or practical. You can still kill your game with it, just not by XP orbs. Today we'll devise a similar farm to this one, with the little change that you don't need a whole server of players to operate it, and you can operate it on your own, even in your single player world. Another new feature for 1.17 that comes in very handy is the new powdered snow. For all intent and purpose, that new powdered snow acts pretty much like the less extreme Cobweb, just with a different handling, and finally renewable, with an extra damage if the entity stays for more than 15 seconds in it. Well, it's still funny that it deals damage to all the mobs, even those that shouldn't be affected by it, like snow foxes, polar bears, but also snowmen of all things that should thrive, maybe even should survive in powdered snow even in hot biomes, still takes freezing damage from snow. Unless I guess this snowman is just secretly Olaf and just loves summer. Some of the use cases of Cobweb that I've been using all the time is to align items thrown from droppers. Cobweb was useful to stack up items in transport, but was creating a significant delay in delivery. With powdered snow, it has pretty much the same function, just it's much more immediate. The ability of holding the entities in check is especially useful for guardians, which always hopped around, and in this case we can store them for a very short time in a place and they don't even jump around when damaged, and that's pretty useful. We actually won't be using this mechanic here, but it's useful nonetheless, it's worth keeping in mind. What we'll be using here is the ability of powdered snow to act as a delay in entities' fall, making them all effectively act like chickens. That worked the same way in principle with cobwebs before, but it was taking more than 30 seconds to go for a single guardian through one of them. And on top of that, if you had a steady stream of mobs, that would pretty much guarantee cramming damage. With powdered snow, we have a redstone-less delay of mobs in transport, which would not cram them, and we should be able to customize how long we want them to fall. For most mobs, falling speed through snow is 1.55 blocks per second, and for chicken, 0.93, if you need that information for something. One more component that we'll need is the mob storage and the cramming prevention. We would want to be able to store a large number of mobs in one spot, and the standard ways to prevent cramming in one place is using ladders or vines. Initially that looked like a weird hack, but if you look at the logic behind it, how it's defined in the code, cramming is the effect of excessive pushing, and there is another mechanic that disables pushing when entities are climbing on blocks. This way we will not be, for example, pushed off of a ladder when climbing in with other players. That makes sense. And there's another place in the code that defines that the entity is climbing if it's in one of the specific climbable blocks, and this way, being in that space occupied by a ladder or a vine, it won't be pushed, but it also won't cram. So how you would typically do that, you would either fill up the space with ladders or vines that would prevent cramming in the entire space, or just to apply that method on the sides where the mobs tend to typically aggregate. This way we can still keep that safety block zone where even with couple hundred mobs in the chamber of this size, occasional mobs moving back and forth may still fill that single spot of cramming of 24 mobs, keeping the very high number of entities still in check. Now, however, the list of all climbable blocks have grown significantly, and we have different properties that are worth considering. Ladders have their own collision box and, like vines, needed to be placed on the side of some block, and that limited our abilities to do cramming safe chambers. Now we can use scaffolding, which needs to be placed on a solid surface or on the side of another scaffolding block, plus it provides a one-way collision surface from the top, which might be useful in some cases. On top of that, the climbable category also have both beanstalk types, and they both don't need to have any support on the side like ladders or vines. So weeping vines need to be attached from the top and twisting vines at the bottom, and with them we can actually create a large area that would prevent cramming without our needs of having a side walls, which is pretty neat. And that's what we'll be using here in our Guardian setup. So, speaking of the devil, here's the setup that I created with all of this in mind. It starts with some basic Guardian spawner cells that move the Guardians to the Nether and move them quickly. You can use whatever you want for that, as long as in general it moves them upwards. We'll need to drop them from quite a high distance to account for the powdered snow and the extra fall damage for Guardians, and we'll need the portals for the player below, so these need to be significantly higher. You could use some other spawner designs like the TT's Waterlock Stairs based one, or even the downwards flowing one, but that simple soul sand base I use in my multiplayer Guardian farm is simple, fast and sufficient here. What is important is to remove the monument and clean up all the water. Yes, you can make a Guardian farm without that, but it will make it super slow and not worth it. If you only need a few shards to make a few conduit setups and you don't care all about Guardian XP or sea lanterns, that's fine. But in all other cases, it's just not worth your AFK time on a crappy farm if you can spend that time doing this exciting task of cleaning up the monument area. I have several videos on the channel discussing several ways to do that from the creative perspective and also from the survival perspective. However, if you just want to do that quickly and be done with it, I strongly recommend removing the monument with the invisibility potions and haste, and then remove all the water using flying machines. And for the walls, I just recommend nothing. With a few simple tricks, you can use flowing water as a natural barrier that doesn't require any blocks to be placed and looks really sick. Another thing, like with any mob farms, you need to light up the caves around the area. The good thing is you don't actually need to be super thorough with that. If you have selected a monument in the middle of a large ocean, you will not have any surface to take care of either. Flooded water caves are all fine. Slime chunks from time to time are fine too, as well as drowned. This farm does not strictly depend on having a super clean mob cap like some other farms do. As long as there is some spawning spots available, it should be fine. Guardians, just by hanging around downstairs waiting to be slain by the player, will create a natural mob switch, making occasional slime and a few mobs here and there, including drowned, naturally despawn over time as you use this farm. If you feel like you've done a super sloppy job with the general spawn proofing of the area, you can just have more of those spawning chambers, increasing the spawning potential of your farm, or reduce it if it's a little too much and generates too many guardians. The thing is, this setup over here with the exact dimensions and sizes of those spawning tanks, it's something that I created using experimentation, which turned out to be exactly what my laptop could handle. So in your cases, you can adjust it to your needs, or your admin needs. If you can handle more than 500 guardians at once like I do, feel free to add more and lengthen these spawning cells. That's something that you would need to try on yourself, but that's easy to tweak one way or the other. So after guardians spawn, they will be moved to the nether and they will be immediately dropped into the columns of powdered snow. And here to keep them for 15 seconds in the nether, we need 22 blocks of powdered snow. And that's the reason I kept the top portal of minimum size, so we only need 88 blocks in total of this stuff. As you can see, I have enabled here a portal cooldown information on the guardians as they come through, so you can see that all of them actually lose all their cooldown the moment they leave the powdered snow, so that's timed perfectly. Then we follow with 30.5 blocks of drop, which brings guardians to a very consistent 1 to 2 hearts of life, unlike using some other methods that recently became extremely inconsistent like lava. So in total, we need at least a 55 blocks clearance between the top portal, where the guardians are spewing out, at the bottom portal when we put them back into the overworld. So here I'm just leaving guardians to go to the portal on their own. I just don't see a reason to have anything special to move them quicker. It's quick enough. On the sides here we have some safety lava in case there is a guardian that manages somewhere to fall through, still having some leftover portal cooldown. If they touch another portal, that would keep them infinitely here, which I'm here mitigating but allowing them to fall through into lava. However, from my observations, powdered snow is behaving really nicely in drawing them down in a very consistent manner, and these openings here exist here in case a player falls through as well somehow, so you don't need to go into lava as guardians, so you have some escape route as well. Or if it's that chamber is not so busy, you can just exit here to the side. Safety first. And that's all of it here in the nether. But before we go, let me show you what else I had before when I was working on this concept, when we didn't even know about the powdered snow. And here it is. So I used here fence gates, letting guardians to drop one step at a time by alternating with redstone which one stays open. The initial fall to 1 heart was not guaranteed, as some of them had 2 or more health points more than others. The setup in the use case I needed was still not preventing all the cramming to happen as well, so it was quite messy, but with powdered snow all of this can be done right now and replaced just with a few blocks of snow, so that's actually great. It solves the inconsistency issues. A redstone should always be your last effort, and it's so much cleaner. So enough looking at the ancient tech, let's go back to 1.17. We are here just below the monument, by the way, aligned so that the nether portals at the bottom match nicely with this one over here. Guardians do like water, and it not only sedates them but also pushes them to the front. However, we cannot have 500 guardians held in water since they will cram, and that's why they will be pushed into the space which is filled with weeping vines, meaning that this entire area makes guardians quote-unquote climbing, making them not pushable, so not crammable. Pretty nice. And it makes sense, doesn't it? A few implementation details. We have here 2 waterlogged stairs that makes it a valid water source, making so that the sources placed over here in the corners will fall into these blocks and then spill all over the vines, since the vines will actually break when flooded. So I used here weeping vines. You could probably use twisting vines here or even scaffolding, but I just haven't checked actually. I didn't need to. Sue me. Okay, since it's not a farm primarily for drops, I don't even know how much you will be getting here drop-wise. That's how much I don't care about it. It's primarily for XP. Just kidding. I was measuring 110,000, killing them as they come in batches every 40 seconds or so while switching to the looting sort. But that was with the hoppers backing up. So if you had a good collection setup, that would be actually much more than that. So without looting, just by throwing potions every 40 seconds, that gave me 65,000 drops per hour, which did actually get collected fully, so that's refreshing. This means that we were getting 150,000 with the looting before. However, if you actually use this farm as an XP source, so you would wait until you exhaust your XP and throw the potions only when you need it. And that gives a throw every 90 seconds or so, giving us about 800 drops per throw or 30,000 drops per hour as a byproduct. That should be sufficient for all your guardian drop needs, and if you're in a pinch, you can always whip up your looting sword and back up the hoppers if you choose to do so. So for the items, we cannot just put hoppers right at the floor of the guardian chamber, because XP orbs would now get stuck on the insides of the hoppers. So we need some sort of solid blocks in the floor and use just hopper minecarts to grab the items. XP orbs will be naturally going straight to the player and items will be sucked down. There is no magic in terms of placing of the hopper minecarts. You should just put the closest one first, then another, let it slide a little bit, and then one more. The key is that these guys will be grabbing more loot since the rest of the items will be pushed here from the back to the front with the water that's flashing down. But since they'll be sitting on 2 hoppers simultaneously, that removes the items from them at double speed, so you should be good. So on the side here we have a detection of when player throws a potion with a long delay that's attached to it. The dropper over here will give us a new potion right away, so we don't need to fiddle with the inventory looking for the space for the new potion next time. But the thing is, guardians go from the overworld to the nether to get transported, loading the nether, but they will spend a little bit more than 15 seconds in the nether as well, meaning that the guardian tickets that load the nether and keep the guardian processed may expire with some guardians still left in the pipes, so to speak. And since we rely on the fact that we'll clear up all the mob cap, making sure that entire new batch has a new space to spawn, it actually may be important to make sure that all those guardians end up in the overworld. And that's why we have here this very long delay that will be sending one item through the portal right after the last guardian should be able even to spawn, loading the nether for this extra 15 seconds, making sure that the entire batch has a chance to go through to the overworld. Optionally, we can replace it with just a single 14 seconds chunk loader, throwing items back and forth. It doesn't matter as long as you keep the nether loaded. It all should be fine. But in this case, we just need to throw one item per one potion throw, so I think that's the most sufficient approach in this case. In the back of the portal, there is nothing. Guardians are repelled by the solid blocks, and that's what we want. Since the cramming zone is at the back of the portal chamber, we should rather make sure that they don't want to go towards the wall. So that portal would rather put on the wall rather than in the center of some large decorative room. There will be plenty of space for decorations over on this end, and that will be all the secrets of this XP farm. In terms of using it, you would probably have some sort of another access to it through a portal that you match, so it wouldn't end up in the collection portal, nor guardians at the bottom in the nether spewing from the player portal. And if you have finished using your XP the previous time, when you enter you should be welcome with a batch fully ready for your potion right here. Otherwise, you just need to wait 30 seconds to set up your shulker boxes or whatnot to wait for the new guardians to show up. So after you splash them, at this point you can just continue with your XP as much as you want, as much as you need, and you don't have to wait till you run out of all the orbs. And once the next batch is ready, you can just splash them right away. That would add new XP orbs to your existing orbs and refresh their timers. So at some point after 3, 4, 5 throws, when you have 2,000 or 3,000 XP orbs around you, I just wrote a small application to count me the orbs around me, that amount should last you a good 5 minutes of just absolutely doing nothing until they despawn, which means that you don't need these guys over here for quite some time. So at this point it's a good time to reduce the CPU cost of the setup for that 5 minutes, just by throwing a potion a little bit to the side, making sure that there is still at least a mob cap of the guardians left. That would reduce drastically the load on the game, letting us do our XP business for the next 5 minutes in relative peace. However, in case you came here entirely to get a lot of XP just to AFK a bit, you should ditch the automatic potion dispensing the moment you throw in the previous one, and then attach the dispenser to some sort of a clock, throwing a potion for us every 80 to 90 seconds. And since stacking is a thing, we don't need to worry anymore about making too much XP and lagging the hell out of the game, since XP stacking doesn't have any particular limits, meaning that we can AFK in this kind of setup, throwing potion every 80 or 90 seconds, even with a surplus of XP. Obviously, like with all multi-dimensional based farms, there is a few words of caution for multiplayer. If you play with other people and they are in the overworld, you do share the overall spawns with them, so this will likely not produce that much or produce way too much than you were thinking, so you have to put either more spawning cells or less to get the balance of the guardians. Same if your computer is, let's say, twice as fast as mine, you're just using a laptop here, you may choose to build a faster guardian spawner, increasing the capacity of each batch, keeping in mind that the requirements would scale quadratically. So for a computer that's twice as fast, you would be able to get maybe 200 more guardians in a batch, for example. You have to check it yourself and test it yourself. On the other hand, if you play with other people and they are somewhere in the nether, the guardians, the moment they go through to the nether, they will automatically despawn on you. So unless you know what's going on, you may be getting some surprises when operating this farm. So in the worst case scenario, if you're on a multiplayer server and lots of players in the nether, you will need another AFK player in the nether so you can prevent the guardians from automatically despawning. That farm, like all portal-based farms these days, work best with single player or one player on the server, but you can get it to work on servers with multiple players as well. If you are on one of those servers, I still would recommend a farm where the XP collection is in the nether side. That one requires one player to just AFK to spawn guardians, but a constant, uninterrupted flow of guardians with the current XP stacking is a very sweet deal. At the end, one more word of caution, and this just applies to 20W46A, which is the current snapshot. XP stacking is kinda broken and applied with mending. You may notice that the XP orbs will just stop giving you XP when you use them to mend anything. So no worries about it. I made a fix for it in Culprit already. You can enable it with Carpet XP Fix for now. However, the bug report on it is actually labeled as important and is being already worked on in Mojang and should be released in the near future, so don't need to panic on that. And if you're watching in the future, you don't even need to worry about it. So that's it, guys, for today. A handy dandy one player garden XP farm utilizing the new XP stacking for continuous XP build up, as well as powdered snow as a reliable mean to streamline mobs delivery. Relatively simple to construct, cheap in resources, maybe apart from 88 buckets of powdered snow, and very satisfying to use. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe if you are new, leave me a comment in the comment section below, hype for the new era of oversized XP farms, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!